How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the sage of the DWMA and built Harem and Soul Eater? Part 1. Huge shout out to Dark Wizard King 69 for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Arizona Desert Death City. Night has fallen over the city of death, the stars shining in the night sky. A meister that lives in the city, Maka Alburn, sat on the roof of her building as she watched the sky. She watched as the stars slowly rolled by, she wondered how her mother was doing on her travels. She saw something out in the distance, a red star that shined a bit brighter than the others. She watched as it grew brighter, before slowly dropping, as if it were a shooting star. She watched as it fell, the red star glowing brighter as it grew closer to Earth until it crashed a mile or two outside the city. Little did she know, others around the city saw the same thing. DWMA Death Room. A strange figure watched the crash from his mirrors, his face covered in a cartoonish mask, the figure itself looking like a mass of black spikes. He thought, it seems a young man with great power entered this world, and his soul, it reeks of sorrow and despair, tempered with great emotional pain. I can only hope that this power will be an ally, and not an enemy. I better get Stein on this, wait, that's a terrible idea, he'll dissect first, ask questions later. Wait, it landed near his lab, this can't be good. DWMA nurse's office. The blonde-haired woman looked up from her research as she saw the red star fall, the papers having the words black blood written in several places. She looked up, her yellow eyes gazing at the star as she thought, such power, it's incredible, how can any being possibly have this type of wavelength? The only ones that could compare are the Kishin and the damn Reaper. She watched as it crashed into the ground, the red aura slowly dissipating, the glow similar to flames. She shivered as she felt her madness lessen, her mind clearing slightly. Her eyes widened as she realized, this wavelength, it's the exact opposite of a Kishin's. Instead of spreading madness, it suppresses it. I must find whatever crashed out there. Death City Death's Mansion. Death the Kid, son of the Grim Reaper looked out the window and saw a red star fall from the sky. He felt the power radiate from it and he thought, what on earth, it's almost like I'm watching father fall from the sky and it's going straight down and the mountain range gives it perfect symmetry, it's beautiful. The two girls that sat in the room with him looked out the window, the taller one captivated by the sight while the younger simply stared. Death City Patchwork Laboratory. The man sat at his computer, typing away, the day's research being logged into the memory, when he heard a large crash outside. He got out of his chair, trying to figure out what just happened, showing it by turning the giant screw he had going through his head. He thought, an extremely large soul wavelength just crashed near my home, things can't be simple can they? He passed a mirror on his way out, only to hear static, then the image of the Reaper appeared. The man turned to the mirror and said, Evening Lord Death, how may I help you? Death looked at the man and said, Stein, I'm sure you heard something crash outside your home yes? The man, Stein, grinned and replied, loud and clear, if it was alive it's certainly dead by now. Death shook his head and said, Stein, whatever crashed is still alive and I want you to be very careful. This being, its soul shows great emotional distress and pain, I don't want you trying to dissect it understand. Stein sighed and said, fine, I'll bring it to you once I find out what the hell it is. Stein reached the front door when he heard Death say, in one piece mind you, no experiments of any kind. Stein closed the door and the mirror showed static again before that too disappeared, showing a regular mirror. Death City Crash Site. A deep impact crater, around 16 yards wide and 6 feet deep, still had the red aura of flames surrounding the rim. If one were to look inside, one would see a 16-year-old boy wearing a red coat with black flames, a sword clutched in his hand. Around his eyes were red markings, and as they slowly opened, his eyes showed to be yellow with the pupils being horizontal rectangles. They slowly changed back to blue, as he wondered how he got there. Flashback. Naruto Namikaze stared down the one man that nearly ruined his life, Sasuke Uchiha. It was after the Fourth Great Ninja War, where Madara Uchiha's defeat ended the Akatsuki, all but one. Sasuke stared back, his eyes showing insanity as he said, you're gonna pay dope. Because of you, my revenge was never finished, because of you, I'm the last Uchiha alive. But it doesn't matter, because everyone is dead. Those fools you called friends, I killed them. The village, rubble. But you just can't die can you? Naruto silently seethed, his hand covered in a dark flame, a sword manifesting itself. It had a bat's wing for a blade, the bone acting as the edge, while the membrane acted as the blunt side. The guard didn't exist, just a blue eye-like jewel separated the blade and hilt. Naruto felt a flame appear in his other hand and he said, just shut up and die. Naruto charged forward, his blade slamming into Sasuke's kusanagi, the blade being the only thing preventing Sasuke from losing his head. Naruto pressed forward, making Sasuke slam into the base of Madara's statue. Sasuke smirked and said, what's wrong dope? No stupid speech. No little bits about wanting me back in the village. Naruto glared at Sasuke, the blue of his eyes turned arctic as he said, no, not anymore. As far as I'm concerned, you're just another soon-to-be bloody smear on the ground. He charged a Rasengan near the Shodai's statue, while Sasuke charged a Chidori at the base of Madara's statue. Sasuke grinned and said, I see, one blow to end it all, too bad you have nothing left. Naruto said nothing, and by some silent signal, the duo charged each other, their final attacks clashing as they did years ago. The colliding chakras caused waves in the air, and Naruto, seeing Sasuke pull on his kusanagi, stabbed him in the chest with his sword, Soul Eater. Sasuke's eyes widened before they slowly glassed over, the chakras finally growing out of control, and Naruto fainted, drawn into the rift the two attacks created. Mindscape. Naruto walked the sewers of his mind, leading only to one place, the den of Kyuubi. The large fox looked down as he got within reach of its claws. He calmly sat down with his back turned and in a dead voice that made Kyuubi shiver, said, go on, I know you want to, you have for the past 16 years. The Kyuubi looked down and said, what are you? The beast was cut off as Naruto yelled, kill me damn it. You've seen this world through my eyes, you've seen what happened. My friends, my loved ones, everyone is gone, at least I can make one person happy. Kyuubi looked down and with a roar, made Naruto fly from his seat and crash into a wall. Kyuubi said, I will do no such thing ninjin. You're not even on the same world anymore. The chakras that lingered from your battle with the Uchiha years ago and the chakra now have torn a rift in dimensions. This trip is one way and only one of us is reaching the other end. Naruto's eyes widened at the beast's words and said, does this mean, you'll? The Kyuubi nodded and said, yes, the trip through the portal is taking a massive toll on your body. The seal is working overtime to use my chakra to heal you, I can barely use enough to act as a shield to make your landing as survivable as possible. By the time you land, I will have no chakra left and will disappear, as will the seal once its job is finished. Your life in the elemental nations is over Kit, but you can start anew and maybe find love again. If it's any consolation Kit, killing you wouldn't get you where your loved ones are, as suicide is a sin, even to us demons. I'm afraid this is goodbye Kit, I hope to never see you again. Naruto nodded in understanding, smirked and said, I could say the same about you fuzzball. Flashback end. Naruto opened his eyes and heard the footsteps of a man approaching. His nose cringed as the smell of cigarettes filled his nose. He heard, my, you're one strange sight. I wonder how you survived that. Naruto looked up and saw a man that wore a lab coat, had various stitches all over his body and clothes. He saw the man reach down and reacted. Stein arrived at the crash site and saw a young man laying in the middle and he thought, man, how the hell did this happen? He lit a cigarette and said, my, you are one strange sight, I wonder how you survived that. He reached down to pull the kid out of the crater when he had to jump back as a purplish fireball nearly collided with his face. He jumped back and saw the kid was slowly getting up, using his sword as a type of cane. Stein looked at him and asked, is that how you treat people that try to help? Naruto looked at the strange man and said, sorry, but I'm not exactly in a trusting mood. Naruto fainted, the stress of the trip finally gotten to him. Stein, hoping for no more fire, slowly picked up the boy to take him to the infirmary. DWMA nurse's office, early morning. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around and thought, white lights, check. White walls, check. White sheets, check. The smell of shit being way too clean to be natural, not exactly check. I must be in some kind of hospital, yet not at the same time. He heard someone come in and when they came into view, his thought stopped. He thought he was looking at an angel as he saw a blonde woman in a lab coat, her hair tied in a small braid going down the front. She wore a black outfit under the coat with what looked like two arrows acting as the belt. Her slightly pale skin made her eyes and hair stick out more and he heard her say, my, I see you're awake. Dr. Stein brought you in some time ago, but I thought you would still be asleep. Naruto slowly looked around and asked, where exactly am I? The woman looked at him and said, you're in the infirmary, but as for where exactly, you're in Death City. My name is Medusa, the nurse here. Naruto blushed and said, my name is Naruto Namikaze. You said this place was called Death City. Medusa nodded and said, yes, this place is run by the Grim Reaper himself. Naruto froze and said, did you say, the Grim Reaper? Medusa nodded, then saw his face freeze and his eyes looked cold and he said, well, if he wants to kill me, I won't have any complaints. Medusa gasped and said, you shouldn't talk like that Naruto-kun, I mean, don't you have family and friends somewhere that might be wondering where you are? Naruto's head drooped and his hair covered his eyes from view and he said, my family was dead before I could know them, my friends were all killed before my eyes, I have nothing left. Medusa, compelled to do something, sat next to Naruto on the bed and pulled him into a hug. He blushed as he felt her body and neither noticed a man in a dark suit come in until they heard, hello Medusa, I came to pick up the. He froze at the sight and he said, I see you two need a moment, I'll be right outside to take him to Lord Death. And with that, Spirit walked back outside, only to see Stein smoking another cigarette. Spirit shivered as Stein said, that kid, one look at his soul and he makes you think. Spirit looked at the slightly insane Meister and asked, what do you mean? He seems a bit depressed, but Stein rubbed his glasses on his shirt and took a puff of his cigarette and said, that is something you'd need to talk to Lord Death about. All I know is, that kid must have suffered and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Stein slowly walked away, leaving Spirit to think. Medusa felt Naruto's soul wavelength when she made contact and she felt peaceful. Her madness was slowly starting to melt away. She slowly let go of him and she said, Naruto-kun, you need to go meet Lord Death, he won't kill you, though he may have some questions for you, that's all. Naruto blushed and asked, can I come see you afterwards? Medusa smiled and said, are you asking me out Naruto-kun? Naruto's blush grew deeper and simply nodded. Medusa giggled and said, sure, I wouldn't mind showing you around town. Naruto hugged her and said, thanks Medusa-chan. She felt her cheeks heat up and Spirit gaped from his spot near the door. Stein chuckled at the sight of his old friend looking like a deer in the headlights. The last time he saw that was when Kami threw him out on his ass for cheating. He coughed to clear his throat, gaining their attention. He then said, as much as I would hate to break up this little moment, senpai, you do need to take our young friend to Lord Death. Spirit broke out of his funk and nearly dragged Naruto out of the room, Medusa still feeling her cheeks, and Stein said, I would be a bit careful Medusa, that boy's soul is filled with deep pain under the surface, the fact that he trusts you like that so quickly must mean something. Stein left the room, while Medusa thought, I knew it, he's the one that crashed outside the city earlier, he was the one that suppressed my madness, I can't believe I held him in my arms, it felt so, right. Death room. Naruto looked up slowly as he followed the man, Spirit, to where he was to meet the Grim Reaper, and he thought, who the fuck thought to put so many guillotines overhead? If this was a school's principal's office, I would be scared shitless to come here. He looked forward and saw a large collection of mirrors on a small platform. He saw a rather large mirror in the center, and he saw Spirit breathe on the mirror, before writing something Naruto couldn't see, before the mirror turned static, like it was a television on the fritz, Naruto saw the Reaper, and he heard, hey there, what's up? In possibly the most cartoonish voice he ever heard. A large dust cloud was where he was standing, and when it cleared, Death and Spirit saw Naruto face down, and they wondered, what the hell? Spirit broke the silence by asking, why the hell are you on the floor like that? Naruto slowly got up and said, that's the Grim Reaper. Are you kidding me? I saw the Reaper before, and there's no way you could be him, he actually looked scary as shit, not something out of Disney's ripoff of a Tim Burton movie. Death chuckled and said, so, you expected me to be scary, well, I better prove that I can be. Naruto looked on in shock as the massive spikes in the mirror turned dark and twisted, Death 800 years ago, and he heard Death chuckle, this time sounding darker, and he said, so, what do you think now? Naruto gulped and said, yeah, what were we talking about before? Death reverted back to his first form and said, I understand if that frightened you, I had to change my look because I scared children. That was when I founded this school. Naruto's sweat dropped and said, so, this room is like the principal's office, right? Death tilted his head and said, I guess you could say it is, why? Naruto face planted and mumbled a few curses before slowly getting up and he heard Death ask, there was a strange sword found with you and you used a purple fire, care to tell us about that? Naruto's eyes turned cold and he said, both the sword and the flame were a gift you could say. A man by the name of Itachi Uchiha gave me a bit of his power, but I didn't exactly know what it was, that was until I saw my friends getting killed and my heart was clouded in hate. When my hate was at its peak, the purple fire was on my hand and it created the sword. Now I can use it whenever I wish. The flame itself was just a medium to create the blade, but I figured out a way to use it to fight. Spirit placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and said, geez, that's quite a tale kid, but you can look on the bright side, here, you can start over, I know it may still hurt, but dwelling on it won't make it any better. Naruto nodded in understanding, while Death asked, okay, who are you and what have you done with Spirit? Spirit chuckled and said, it's all me, I can be serious if I need to you know. You know I want to prove to Maka that I can be a good father and if given advice can help, then why not? Death nodded, while Naruto said, this is all well and good, but I guess I'm joining this school, right? Death nodded and said, yes, but with that sword of yours, we can't really list you as a Meister, and you don't actually change into a weapon, so that option is out as well. Naruto had a confused look on his face and asked, what do you mean by weapons and Meisters? Spirit answered, he means that the students of this school are filed under two classes, weapons, like myself, are those that can turn into an actual weapon. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw Spirit change into a scythe, the shaft was pitch black, with a blade to match, the shaft taking the shape of a cross when it was without the blade. He then heard, as for Meisters, a weapon can't fight by themselves, except for a few cases, and they need a Meister to work with. Seeing as you have a weapon that's part of you, you can be filed under both. Naruto nodded and said, so let me get this straight, weapons are people that are able to turn into a weapon at will, and Meisters are people who work with weapons in order to fight, right? Spirit shifted back to his human form and said, that's correct, my daughter Maka is a Meister, though I myself am a weapon. Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, then wouldn't she have some weapon abilities? If being a weapon is like a bloodline, she should have at least some. Spirit shook his head and said, I wouldn't know, she never showed any. Death cleared his throat and said, well this is all well and good, there is the manner of where Naruto will be staying. Naruto narrowed his eyes and said, I don't recall giving my name. Death sighed and said, I saw how you acted with our nurse this morning, she doesn't know it either, but I can see what goes on through the mirrors, but that's all. I'm sorry if you think I invaded a private moment. Naruto shook his head and said, just don't do it too often, okay? Death nodded and Spirit said, well I need to get going, gotta cover Maka's class today, seeing as Sid is absent. Death nodded and said, good, take Naruto with you, it would be a god chance for him to get to know others, Naruto, how old are you? Naruto had a tick mark and said, I'm 16, why, are most of the students 12 or something? Spirit gulped and said, Maka is a year or two under you actually, as are most of her friends, so you won't be around a bunch of kids. Naruto sighed and said, fine, might as well. DWMA Crescent Classroom. Maka Albrin was busy reading the book in front of her, trying to not pay attention to what her partner was saying, as she was still ticked from what happened earlier, until she heard, hey Maka, did you hear the rumor? They say our old teacher Sid was found dead, he had a Statue of Liberty stabbed into his forehead. Maka scoffed and said, everyone knows about that soul. Soul shook his head and said, but you didn't hear that soon after, several students were attacked by someone that looked like Sid, and the worst thing, Maka stopped reading, as she was really focusing on what he was saying, until, they saw a giant hole on his forehead. Fed up with his dumb behavior, she closed her book as she slowly said, Maka, chop. Soul was seen face down on the desk, the reason was Maka slamming her book down on his head. She was about to continue reading when she heard, damn, I've seen people busting ass while reading a book, but never using one to do it. Maka looked up and saw a blonde kid walking in with her father. Most of the girls in the class had hearts in their eyes, while Spirit walked in afterwards and said, alright, shut your mouths, class is starting. Maka looked down in horror as she saw her dad with the clipboard for roll, and he said, seeing as roll is a pain, I won't deal with it. Now let's get this straight, the bell doesn't decide when class ends, I do. Spirit looked up at where his daughter was sitting, before Naruto slapped him in the back of the head. Maka and the others laughed, and Naruto said, try failing at looking cool some other time, seeing as I'm joining this class you might as well tell me where I'll be sitting. Spirit gave a small glare and said, you'll be sitting next to Maka, got that? Naruto nodded and moved to take his seat, ignoring the stares the girls were giving, as he thought, great, fangirls, I wonder if Sasuke felt like a piece of meat, now I see why he hated them. Naruto reached the row and said, hey there, you must be Maka, your dad has said a lot about you on the way over here. Maka sighed and said, sadly, but I don't treat that guy as my papa. Naruto sighed and said, I know, he told me of how he cheated, and I kinda gave him a boot to his ass for that, I mean honestly, what a dumbass thing to do. Maka nodded and noticed that Soul and her dad were arguing when she heard, "Oh, that's right, Maka, Soul, you've been called to see Lord Death, Naruto, go with them, you're in this school now, so you'll be sticking with them." Naruto sighed and got out of his seat, letting Maka leave first when Soul asked, "So, Naruto, you a meister weapon?" They walked down the halls when Naruto said, "It's hard to explain, but I'm guessing you're a weapon, right?" Soul nodded and grinned and said, "Yep, soon, I'm gonna be the coolest Death Scythe ever." Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, "Death Scythe? What the heck is that? I heard about weapons and meisters, but not that." Maka cleared her throat and started to talk, as if to give a lecture, and said, "A weapon can only become a Death Scythe when they have consumed 99 Kishin souls and 1 witch soul. Getting the 99 is the easy part, but the witch is hard, as finding them is easy, beating them is hard. If the weapon fails to eat a witch's soul after the 99th soul, all souls will be taken away and the pair must start over." Naruto snickered and said, "You must know that because it happened to you, right?" Both Soul and Maka said, "Don't ask, please." Naruto only thought, "Oh, it must have." Death room. Naruto watched as Maka opened the door and followed the duo inside, never noticing someone saying, "It's Soul and Maka, let's show them what we can do, Tsubaki." The figure held a chain scythe and shouted out, "Rules of the assassin number 1. Conceal yourself in darkness, still your breath and seek an opening to your target. Rules of the assassin number 2. Call your target, be able to guess his thought, his movements. Rules of the assassin number 3. Defeat your target before he becomes aware of your existence." Naruto looked up and saw a kid wearing a semi-black outfit, holding a chain scythe, and heard it say, "Black Star, you just completely ruined any chance of surprising them." Naruto smirked and said, "Exactly, for someone who's an assassin, you suck at actually sneaking around." Black Star had a tick mark and jumped off the guillotine he was standing on, hoping to beat the new guy, when he felt his blade be stopped by the strangest sword he ever saw, and Naruto said, "This is why I'm counted as both, this sword is a part of me, so I can be a weapon, while at the same time I'm using it, so I'm a meister, best not to dwell on it." Black Star jumped away and said, "You're good kid, but it's my time to shine, right Tsubaki?" The chain scythe glowed and shifted, turning into a girl with dark hair, set in a ponytail, while wearing a battle dress, with boots and arms warmers. He saw her wear what looked like stockings, and thought, "God, the chicks here are hot, shit, pervy sage got to me." Tsubaki saw his eyes and blushed, as she thought, "My, I didn't know that someone could look so." "Stop, bad Tsubaki, you don't know him so well yet, get to know him first, then you try to, bad." The group soon walked to Death's mirror, and Soul said, "So, who's gonna call him?" Maka walked forward and said, "I'll do it." She breathed on the mirror and made the call. Soon enough, the Reaper was on the other end. "Hello there, what's up? Good to see ya. So Naruto, you settling in well?" Naruto grinned and said, "I certainly can't complain. Gotta love the sights." Tsubaki blushed, something that Maka noticed and even Soul noticed, as he said, "Geez, you're acting like Maka's dad, man." Maka gave him a quick Maka chop to the head and said, "Why have we been called here, Lord Death?" Death cleared his throat and said, "Well, the reason is that there is something I need you for to take." They leaned in to hear it and Death said, "Extra lessons." The 4 of them face planted and Naruto started to laugh and Maka said, "Wait, you mean like the sort of things stupid people take?" Soul was more vocal and said, "Hell no, I'm gonna be the strongest Death Scythe, there's no way in hell I'm gonna take any stupid extra lessons." Death looked at them with a blank face and asked, "What is your duty as weapons and meisters?" Maka cleared her throat and said, "To gather 100 souls, 99 Kishin and 1 witch, in order to create a weapon fit for the Grim Reaper." Death clapped his hands and said, "Exactly, and as of today, how many do you 4 have?" They shrugged and they saw him hold up an 0 and he said, "Exactly 0. Soul and Maka found the ground very interesting, while Naruto and Black Star were laughing it up as Tsubaki kept saying, "We're very sorry." Death looked at them and said, "Now then, on to the lesson, I'm sure some of you have heard the rumors. Naruto, seeing as you're new here, I'm sending you on this mission too, so listen up." Naruto nodded and Death said, "As you may know, one of our teachers was killed recently and now reports of a zombie matching the man's description have been attacking students. Some have been found to be in serious condition. Apparently, he claims that he has been freed from the fear of death and is trying to get others to feel the same. The attacks are because there are those that get in his way. I don't know who it was that made Sid into a zombie or why, and that is what I need you to find out." Naruto listened in and knew Death was hiding something about this whole mess, but he couldn't figure it out. Black Star then said, I see, so we find these punks, beat them, and take their souls, right? Death said, yep, that's the basics of it. Though, there is one thing I need to mention. Everyone raised an eyebrow and he said, if you screw this up, I will have no choice but to expel you. Naruto had to hold his ribs at the sight of the four of them literally frozen, with Maka shouting, wide. Hook Cemetery. Naruto followed the group to where Sid's grave was resting, and Soul, being a bit irritated, said, hey zombie. Get your ass out here now. Naruto sighed and said, shouting out the fact we're here isn't gonna do any good, after all, he could get the drop on us, instead of us getting the drop on him. Maka, who in a depressed state, was against a tree, muttering about being expelled. Reminds of Kid, doesn't it? And they haven't even met yet. Tsubaki nodded and said, he's got a point, Soul, we need to be more quiet. Black Star, completely ignoring her words, said, hey Soul, wanna go piss on Sid's grave? Soul grinned and said, yeah, maybe we can take a dump on it too, that will show that damn zombie. Naruto was behind them and gave them a slap on the back of their heads. Tsubaki, hoping that someone was gonna stop them, had a sigh of relief. Naruto said, the hell are you two thinking? If that happened, you'd have bad luck. You should know it's wrong to mess with someone's grave. Maka felt the ground stir under her and a hand popped out of the ground and hoisted her by her leg, she having to use her hands to keep her skirt up. Sid, while having dark blue skin and a never-ending grin, wore what looked like jeans and a basketball shirt with the word zombies on the front. Sid asked, are you scared? He lifted a pie cup and said, you're scared. Soul charged forward mid-change, separating Sid from Maka, who managed to slide away. Naruto looked at the man and thought, shit, guess this is what a zombie is in this world. His hand was covered in purple fire, to Sid and Tsubaki's amazement, and saw the sword reveal itself. Naruto said, Maka, Soul, I'd like you to properly meet my weapon, Soul Eater. Soul partly changed to human and said, hey Naruto, don't go ripping off my name, damn it. Naruto chuckled and said, sorry, that's just the name I heard it say when I first got it, don't mean to insult. Naruto stood in a ready stance, his left foot pointed out, his right foot in the back, Naruto holding the sword up in his right hand, while the left held purple fire. Riku's fight stance, Sid shook himself from his thoughts and said, I doubt we've met, you must be a new student. Naruto grinned and said, just came in today, I never really got the chance to get a good workout. Sid chuckled and pulled his gravestone out of the ground and said, well, maybe that can be changed. He then swung the stone behind him as if it were a sword and said, Maka, Soul, Black Star, Tsubaki, Naruto, good morning, hello, good night. I was never one to miss a greeting. Naruto rushed forward and said, well I hope you got your fill, cause it's the last you'll ever say. He swung his blade down, making Sid jump back, a trail of fire, the only evidence the sword was swung at all. Black Star, not one to be outdone, said, forget this, I'm the one that's gonna get this zombie. Tsubaki was starstruck as Naruto moved around Sid's strikes and striking back with his sword, and when a hit connected, it passed right through and Naruto was right behind Sid. Naruto kicked him in the back towards Black Star and Maka and said, come on you two, get you head in the game here. Sid slowed his speed down using his gravestone and thought, shit, I know Maka and Black Star are tough on their own, but this new kid is on another level and I can tell he's holding back, but why? Is he letting Maka and Black Star take the credit for beating me? Must be, seeing as this is their assignment, not his. He focused his attention to Black Star, who was up in the air, and Sid slammed his gravestone into his chest, saying, check out the gravestone you're gonna get, the living, and. As they impacted the ground, a cross made of light appeared over them, and Naruto saw Black Star on the ground. Maka thought, man, I know Sid was a knife meister, but the fact he can do that without a demon weapon. We 1-stars barely have a chance. She saw Naruto have a purple fireball in his hand, and Sid barely dodged it. Black Star slowly got up and trapped Sid on both sides. Sid barely was able to react to Black Star, giving him a kick to the solar plexus, and he was launched away. Black Star said, Tsubaki, shuriken mode. Naruto watched as Tsubaki changed from her chain scythe to a giant shuriken, which Black Star used to try and catch Sid by his legs. Naruto thought, if this is anything like how Zabuza reacted, then he saw Sid jump over it and charge at Maka and had his gravestone raised over his head. Sid slammed it down, hoping to hit Maka, but when the dust cleared, she was nowhere to be found. Everyone heard an eep and saw Naruto holding Maka bridal style in a tree, and he said, well now, that was a close one wasn't it? Maka had the decency to blush when Soul said, shit, I didn't even see him move, just who is this guy? Naruto grinned and said, I'll tell you later, but right now, we need to end this guy, you got anything that can do that? Maka nodded and said, yeah, can you give us a bit of time? Naruto nodded and said, consider it done. Naruto set Maka down on the ground and vanished before they could say anything. The next thing they saw was Sid having his head leaning to the right, courtesy of Naruto's foot hitting it. Maka and Soul started to focus and they thought in unison, soul resonance. Everyone watching felt Maka's wavelength get stronger and to Naruto's amazement, he saw the scythe blade be surrounded with what looked like chakra and Maka said, scythe technique. Witch hunter. Naruto whistled and said, damn, reminds me of the Rasen Shuriken. Maka swung the scythe, only to mess up on the turn, have the blade crashed into the ground, and the resulting shock wave nearly hitting Naruto and Black Star, both of whom had to jump out of the way. Naruto sweat dropped and thought, yep, just like the Rasen Shuriken, a pain in the ass to learn. Maka's Soul and Black Star started to argue, while Naruto watched as they turned on each other. He saw Tsubaki, even in her weapon form, beg for them to stop, and he thought, shit, it's Team 7 all over again. Maka, deciding to go the regular way, charged at Sid, only for him to sink into the ground, and Naruto thought, oh great, just like Kakashi, if I find out this guy is a perv I don't know, but I'll figure it out. He tried to concentrate on the ground when he was interrupted by Sid slashing at Maka with a spike, causing the duo to go back to back. Naruto hid in the shadows, waiting in case they needed it. Black Star said, Tsubaki, Trap Star, let's go. Naruto watched as Tsubaki's chain spread out, forming a star on the ground, Maka only able to watch. Naruto thought, this kid got serious all of a sudden, I may grow to like this kid. Sid, thinking of getting rid of both, emerged from the ground next to them, and when he poised for the kill, he found himself wrapped in Tsubaki's chains, and oddly enough, Maka was tied up along with him. She said, what the hell Black Star? Naruto laughed and said, damn, I really am starting to like you guys, I gotta say, that trap was genius. Black Star chuckled and said, thanks, I knew he was hiding, and it's thanks to his smell I was able to know when to spring the trap. Sid soon found himself still trapped in Tsubaki's chains, with Soul in his face asking, come on, tell us, who was the one that made you a zombie? Sid turned his head away and said, nope, no way, I was never a man to give up secrets. Black Star, getting an idea, pulled Tsubaki's skirt away, showing her panties. Black Star said, check it out. Sid stared and Naruto saw a touch of red on his cheeks and he thought, he is a perv great. Naruto subtly looked at Tsubaki's panties and thought, can't blame him though, that side is perfect. Sid blurted out, it was Dr. Stein, he did it. Naruto sighed and stood in front of Tsubaki so she could fix her skirt, receiving a whispered thank you. Soul, not one to be outdone, tried to get info the same way by showing Maka's panties, but still got no response. In fact, Sid almost looked to be in pain and said, please, no more, I'll tell ya, he lives at Patchwork Laboratory. Black Star, Soul, and Sid each received a Maka chop to the head, the only reason Naruto wasn't hit was because he didn't look. Naruto sighed and said, thanks for not rearranging my brain cells. Maka blushed and said, well, unlike those pervs, you were smart enough not to look, so you at least get spared from the same treatment. Tsubaki finished fixing her skirt and said, honestly, why on earth did Black Star do that? Naruto sighed and said, that kind of interrogation isn't that odd, I knew someone who was good at what she did, and to be honest, she did not dress in what one would call modest. Maka looked surprised, but Naruto said, come on, we still got this lesson to finish right. Otherwise you guys may get expelled, and I like hanging around you guys too much to let that happen. Soul was cursing up a storm, saying, damn, that new kid is looking cooler than me. Patchwork Laboratory. Stein sat at his computer, slowly typing away, when he leaned back and said, the kiddies will be here soon, good, at least they may end my boredom. Death Room. Death was watching the events through his mirror as he thought, Naruto-kun is stronger than I thought. He also seems to get along with the others pretty well, that's a good sign. Maybe his time here at Shibuya will help him recover. His thoughts were broken as he heard his son, Death the Kid say, that Naruto is one impressive character father, you say he's a new student. He looks like he's been doing this for a lot longer. Death turned to face his son and said, you're right, he does seem like he hasn't he? I wonder if he'll be able to take on the one who turned Sid into a zombie. Kid sat on the throne near the mirror and asked, by the way, who is he? This Dr. Frankenstein. Death looked at his son and said, he's one of the strongest meisters to ever graduate from this academy. He is considered a genius, and for good reason. Kid stared impassively as he asked, Dr. Stein, he was one of the first partners for your current death, Scythe wasn't he? Death nodded, and Liz asked, but he's that strong, yet you sent them to fetch his soul, right? Isn't that risky? Patty, Liz's younger sister, giggled and said, but if it were sis, it would be easy, right? Liz sweat dropped and said, I think you're overestimating me, Patty. If I tried to take him on, I'd be dead for sure. Kid scowled as he said, that's the theme for these extra lessons, isn't it? That's a bit harsh, don't you think? Death merely looked at the mirror, Kid standing by him as he said, there's no doubt about it, they'll die. Patchwork Laboratory. Naruto, Soul, Maka, Black Star, Tsubaki, and Sid, who was still wrapped in Tsubaki's chains, walked through the front gate. Soul took a quick look of the area and said, Stein is in here, isn't he? Black Star scoffed and said, let's just find him and finish this lesson quickly. Naruto nodded and said, I agree, this place just creeps me the hell out. Soul took another look and said, this training ground is a bit of a dump, huh? Naruto shrugged and said, I've seen worse, maybe it looks this bad cause the guy trains here a lot. Maka wondered out loud, I wonder what kind of person this Dr. Stein is. Naruto noticed the door fling open and a clattering sound was heard and Soul said, sounds like something is coming out. Naruto sighed and said, guess we'll see what kind of person he is, won't we, Maka? They saw someone riding a office chair backwards, but a wheel got caught on the bump in the door, making the chair fall, and the person hit his head. Naruto couldn't help but laugh, even as Stein said, shit, that didn't go so well. He picked up his chair, went back inside as he said, let's try this again. He did the same action, only to get the same results. Naruto had to hold his ribs, and Stein said, so, you kids got some business with me or something? Soul smirked and said, you're Stein, aren't you? We've come to eat your soul. Stein slowly got up off the ground, brushing himself off as he said, ah yes, that's right. You wouldn't happen to be students from Shibuya, aren't you? Stein looked and saw Naruto and said, my, I see you're settling in well, maybe I'll get to see how strong you are conscious, won't I, Naruto-kun? Naruto grinned and said, well, I guess so, I'll kick your ass or my name ain't Naruto. He paused and shouted, damn you, Karabi. You got me doing that shit now too. Tsubaki giggled and said, it wasn't bad at least. Naruto chuckled and said, yeah, but the guy I got the habit from sucked at it, it would piss people off big time, cause he couldn't say a proper rhyme. He face-palmed and said, I gotta stop with that shit. Maka, ignoring what happened, said, so, you're the one attacking Shibuya students, why? Do you have something against it? Stein took his cigarette out of his mouth as he said, not much, my motives are very simple. Training, observation, and investigation. That was my original motive. Everything in this world can be used for training, and that includes myself as well. In the light, they could see Stein properly, as everything on him, his clothes, his chair, even parts of his body had stitches, giving him the appearance of being stitched together. Maka felt an odd feeling as she said, hey Soul, do you feel something strange? Soul just shrugged. Stein looked at the pair intensely as he said, your soul wavelengths aren't very synchronized. A serious person that tries hard with a twisted person that has a sarcastic soul. You're not working together so well. Maka and Soul looked shocked as Soul said, you can see the souls of living humans. You must be a Meister. Maka then said, and a high-level one if he can see our personalities. Soul looked at Maka and asked, Maka, you can see everything too, right? Maka, looking a bit nervous said, sure, of course I can. Stein grinned and said, oh really, your soul is wavering a bit. It's actually kinda cute. Maka moved her hands as if her chest was exposed and said, shut up, quit looking you creep. Naruto sighed at their antics as he and the rest heard, shut up. Let's quit this boring conversation for commoners. Starting now, all advanced conversations will be about me. Maka and the others looked up and Maka said, since when exactly? Naruto had a more crude question, okay, I wanna know how the fuck he got up there, I know he can't walk up walls. Better yet, how the hell did we not notice this guy doing it? I feel like the Anbu back when I painted the cage monument in broad daylight. Everyone had a WTF look on their face, though the moment was ruined as Black Star said, I don't care whether you can see souls or can't see them. Like I care about other people's souls. If I can see my own soul, I'm happy. Stein grinned and said, you're cool, you have such a self-absorbed soul. I wonder, how on earth could anyone partner up with you? I doubt anyone could match up properly. Black Star jumped at Stein, trying to kick him in the head. Keyword trying, as Stein blocked the kick with his forearm, while in the seat, the chair turning with the force of the kick, and Stein gave Black Star a punch to the face, while the chair still moved. Naruto thought, this guy reminds me of Kakashi a bit, being so laid back. Well, Tsubaki looked at Black Star in worry. Stein looked over and said, ah, I see, you must be the Wild One's partner. You have such an accepting soul, always agreeing with the flow of things, it's easy to see how it could work. Stein smiled and said, is there a feeling of attraction I'm seeing? I wonder, is it someone in the group? Tsubaki blushed before Naruto stood in front of her and said, you love asking questions that don't need to be answered, don't ya? Besides, didn't your mama tell you it's rude to stare at a lady when they don't want you to? Stein took a look at Naruto's soul, and to the surprise of Maka, Soul, and Tsubaki, they saw a sad look on his face. Stein said, it actually pains me to look at your soul. A feeling of loneliness, hate, and sorrow practically radiate from you. The darkness of despair from your past that rests within you is tempered with the light of hope for the future. Maka and Tsubaki looked at Naruto and to their surprise, saw his eyes changed. Instead of the blue they usually saw, his eyes were yellow. He summoned Soul Eater and said, enough talk Stein, lest you forget, we have a lesson to finish. Stein smiled and said, I guess you do. I do have enough data, so, shall we proceed with the practical portion? Maka charged at Stein, Soul in his weapon form in hand, only for the strike to be dodged, and Maka received a kick to the side. Stein, using her as a springboard, rocketed back, only to hit Black Star in the face with the back of his head, all the while not getting out of his office chair. He then thought, who's missing, wait, where's his thoughts were broken as he moved from under a helm breaker, Naruto's sword burning the ground it impacted with a dark fire. Naruto then raised his open hand and launched several fireballs at Stein, who, using his chair, moved out of the way, only for Maka to slash at him from behind, making him get out of the chair, or his head would be rolling. Naruto and Maka seem to work well together, he drives me into a corner, and she attacks from the blind spot while I'm distracted. They are one hell of a team, and they only just met. Stein brushed himself and said, Maka the scythe user, I wonder where I heard it before. Ah yes, I remember, your Spirit Senpai's daughter, the one he tries to impress. Soul, feeling left out, asked, Spirit. Maka scoffed and said, that was his name before he became a death scythe. He thinks he'll look better if he's called that instead. Stein grinned and said, yes, you're his beloved daughter, the daughter of the woman who stole my best training ingredient. Naruto, feeling a click in place, said, wait, by training you mean, oh hell no, you did experiments on the guy. Stein merely grinned, which made Naruto think, screw Kakashi, this guy's is just like Orochimaru, I just pray he ain't into little boys. Stein adjusted his glasses and in what was the creepiest voice said, I just want to dissect you. Naruto felt a shiver go down his spine and he stood in front of Maka and said, as if creep, I won't let you make a single nick. Stein chuckled and said, such a chivalrous attitude. For such a dark soul, you seem to be quite attached to these guys, aren't you? Naruto glared and thought, I knew death was up to something, he must have sent us here to make us learn something, as no leader in their right mind would do this as an extra lesson. Naruto then said, you're right on one thing, I have a dark soul. In fact, back where I'm from he disappeared and Stein moved to avoid being cut in half, as Naruto said I'm the Kuro Sennin. Dark Sage. Tsubaki was staring, Sid too shocked to say anything. Stein, seeing Maka open, rushed her with a palm strike and Soul said, it's just a normal attack, block it. Maka raised her guard and Stein tried to strike the staff, only to be blocked by what looked like a honeycomb-style transparent shield, and to their shock, Naruto was the one using it with a hand raised. Stein's palm radiated with his wavelength, which Soul noticed. Naruto said, nah, I told you, not a single nick. He pushed his hand forward, forcing Stein back, only for Black Star to rush him with an elbow strike, Stein taking the hit to his back. Black Star shouted, you're not the only one who can use a soul wavelength directly, Black Star Big Bang Wave. Death Room. They'd watched in amazement as Stein's attack was blocked but still noticed the soul wavelength used in it. He said, wait, he used his own soul to attack. He doesn't need the aid of a weapon. But I thought a Meister needed a weapon to fight with in order to be stronger. Death nodded and said, that's correct, as the bond between a Meister and weapon is like that of a guitar and its amp. Alone, the guitar can't make much sound, but when an amp is added in the mix, it's louder than it was alone. Kid watched more as death continued. Witch Hunter, the move Maka used, if a bit off, is a perfect example, as by using the soul resonance, she was able to have greater power. But Stein is different. He can fight without a weapon, and we can all hear his sound. Kid looked amazed and said, impossible, if he had a weapon, they would be doomed. Death shook his head and said, I wouldn't say that, as it seems Naruto-kun has a few tricks of his own. That shield of his worked wonders, and his sword has great cutting power. And to think, he's still holding back a great deal. Kid could only stare, his weapon partners sharing the expression. Patchwork Laboratory. Stein barely moved, shocking Tsubaki and Black Star, and he said, my, that was different. Soul looked shocked and said, what the hell, didn't it go through? Stein grinned and said, oh I felt it, but if I can get a sense of a person's wavelength, I can match it. Because of that, I don't even feel it, it's like the connection of a weapon and Meister. Kid looked shocked and said, he can do that. Seriously? Death nodded and said, he can. Observation and his flexible soul wavelength, they are what make Stein such a tough opponent. Though it seems Naruto is also a bit of a tough one. Stein rushed at the group, Naruto zipping into his line of sight and kicking him into the air before appearing above him and axe kicking him into the ground. Stein lifted himself up and brushed himself off. He turned the screw on his head and when Black Star tried to strike him again, Stein turned and shocked him with his wavelength. Naruto gripped his sword at the sight while Kid, fed up with what he was seeing, got up to try and help them. Death turned and said, where do you think you're going? You can't interfere in their lesson. Besides, you're a Shinigami, not a student. Kid looked back at his father and said, well then, I guess you can count me as a student. Father, I trust you to enroll us. Death sighed and said, this is getting a bit complicated. Stein stood over the beaten Black Star, Tsubaki worried about her Meister, but couldn't leave in order to keep Sid tied up. Sid then said, Tsubaki, I won't run or hide, that was the kind of man I was. You should go and help Black Star, he'll need it after that shock. Tsubaki nodded, running over to Black to move him away from the battle. Naruto appeared behind Stein, who bent out of the way of the attack, while Maka sat frozen, as she saw Stein's soul. Despite Soul trying to talk her out of it, she saw Naruto's soul, and the very feeling Stein talked about washed over her. Stein glanced in her direction and said, she must be able to see my soul. Naruto stopped and said, so, what was the point in this, really? Stein grinned and slowly walked over to Maka, Soul standing in his way. Soul grinned and said, he's being patient and even Naruto's fighting him off, he seems like a decent enough guy. Maka slowly got it together, only for Stein to say, you all passed. Naruto sweat dropped and thought, this is the first exam all over again. Soul had a simple, what? Well Stein patted his head and said, well, the point, as Naruto asked, was to get a feel for how you work together. Naruto asked, and let me guess, Death, Sid, and you all had a part to play in this huh? Stein smiled and said, yes, though seeing your performance Naruto-kun, I must say, Lord Death must have had a lot to see. Soul then said, so, that means, Sid, with his new ever-present grin, said, sorry guys, I wasn't the kind of man to trick others, even when I was alive, but you all learned from this right? Naruto sighed and said, that was the second craziest test I ever took. Black Star, now conscious, asked, then what was the first? Naruto sighed as he remembered, my team and I were newly formed and the mission our sensei gave was fairly simple. We had to fight him to get one of two bells from him. Those that didn't get one by the time it was over would fail. 3 people and only 2 bells, that would and did cause us two to start in fighting and we nearly failed. But in the end, we learned the most important thing and I will always remember it. A group fell silent as he said, teamwork is the most basic but important thing for any team of any size. And my sensei gave us a saying that his sensei, my father, told him. Those that disobey the rules are trash, but those that betray their comrades are lower than trash. The group looked in awe, even Stein and Death, as they silently agreed, and Stein said, wise words, your father must have been a great man. Naruto had a far-off look as he said, yeah, he was. Soul, still dazed said, man, this whole bit was an act. Stein took off his glasses and said, maybe, but running you brats around like that was fun. Everyone but Sid stared and they thought, so the sadistic crap was real. Stein then said, you all must be tired, why not stay here for the night? He got, definitely not. Screw that shit. From Maka's Soul and Naruto respectively. Sid then said, except for you Naruto, you don't have a choice in the matter. Lord Death hasn't found a proper place for you to stay yet, so you need to bunk here for a bit. Naruto sighed and said, shit, just my luck, but so help me, if you try to experiment on me, I will dice you into pieces, got it? Stein shivered and said, trust me, Lord Death wouldn't let me anyway. The next day. Everyone was waiting for the new teacher to arrive, even Black Star made it before the teacher, and the back door opened. Naruto arrived in a black cloak that had a zipper going up the front, with the ties for the hood on the side, with a small chain connecting the two sides. Basic org shi cloak, he sat in between Maka and Tsubaki and asked, how are you guys today? Soul groaned and said, I was wiped out from yesterday, still a man. Maka put her head down on the desk and said, I had a nightmare that Stein was actually operating on me. Naruto patted her shoulder as the front door opened and they heard a clattering noise, making Maka, Soul, Tsubaki, and Black Star remember the night before. Naruto said, I hope it's your dad Maka, cause if not, then this is gonna suck so badly. Maka nodded and as they looked in horror, Stein, still trying to fix his mistake, rolled into class on his chair backwards and actually fell off and slid halfway across the room. He merely opened a book and said, okay class, today I'll start the lesson and we'll start by dissecting a frog. Maka and Soul had their mouths open in terror, Naruto sweat dropped and Black Star looked insulted and Tsubaki just said nothing. You're joking right? I think this is the first time I actually wanted Papa to show up instead. Geez, this guy really is like Orochimaru, way too into the science, though that may actually be an improvement compared to him. TSK, he's getting all the attention. Stein looked up at their reactions and merely held that weird grin. A few days later Death Mansion. Death the kid was going about his daily routine and by that, it was going around his entire home checking to see if everything was symmetrical. I folded the toilet paper into a perfect triangle. The picture frame is even from the ground and the candles on the left and right are the same length. Liz, the taller of the two sisters, sighed and said, give it a break kid, honestly. Kid smiled and said, it's bilateral symmetry, my art is symmetry. He walked towards the door and said, okay. We're also starting school today. We're leaving, Liz, Patty. Liz sighed and said, why bother, we're already 3 hours late as it is. DWMA. Naruto was snoozing under his hood before he heard Maka and Tsubaki walk in. He lifted his head to look at them and say, hey guys, you hear the rumors flying around? Tsubaki, a bit curious, asked, what rumors? Naruto pulled his hood back and said, we're having another new student, I heard some of the teachers mentioning it. Stein rolled into the classroom carrying what looked like a cage under a sheet and said, hello class, today we're having another dissection lesson. Naruto slammed his head on the desk and said, if it's another frog I am so gonna melt that screw off his head. Stein pulled the sheet off the cage, showing not a frog, but a colorful bird that even Naruto knew had to have been illegal to have. Maka then confirmed it by saying, but that bird's on the brink of extinction, you can't do that. Stein grinned and said, so? All the better reason to find out more on it before it's extinct, right? He then looked up and noticed 2 students were missing. By the way, Soul and Black Star aren't here, is something wrong? Naruto sighed and said, those idiots must be off somewhere ditching class. I can't judge cause I used to do the same thing, but blowing off your partner like that is just plain wrong. Maka nodded and said, yeah, with the way those two are always hanging out, they might as well be a team. Tsubaki had a chilling feeling as the image of Soul and Black Star as a team went through her mind. She suddenly grabbed Maka by the shoulders, not noticing she sandwiched Naruto in between herself and Maka, saying, please don't go saying that. That could end up very badly. Tsubaki then noticed Stein and her classmates were looking at her, the guys in amusement or jealousy, as she and Maka noticed that Naruto was squished between them. Tsubaki started sputtering apologies and Maka remained silent as Stein said, if you're gonna do those type of behaviors, either do it off hours or skip class, but onto important matters. As you all may know, we have a new student coming in today. Naruto merely grinned and said, I told ya. DWMA entrance. Black Star and Soul sat, well, Soul was sitting as they heard of the new kid and Black Star in his fashion reacted by saying, today, there is a guy I have to assassinate. Soul merely watched on as Black Star ranted on, right now at Shibuya, there is one thing everyone is talking about. Shinigami's son in gonna join. I cannot forgive him for being more talked about than me. Soul merely sighed and said, geez, I forget you're that kind of guy. Black Star started to look around furiously as he said, and when is that damn stray gonna get here? We've been waiting for 3 hours. Soul merely fell asleep. He was jolted awake by a slap to the head, as well as Black Star, who fell quiet. They turned and saw Naruto in his coat, it being open to show a design of his old seal on his shirt. "There you two are, you're lucky I left a clone to deal with class, or else I wouldn't have found you idiots." The duo shivered under his glare as he said, "Honestly, I heard a lot about you two from Tsubaki and Maka. Always running off somewhere, leaving those two alone. As men, you should be ashamed." Kid was walking up the steps, Liz smiling as she said, Sisters, we had to grow up on the streets, so going to school like this feels kind of nice. Right, Patty?" When she didn't hear an answer, she saw her sister looking forward while Kid admired the building. She heard Naruto berate Soul and Black Star and thought, and to think, chivalry is not yet dead, thank goodness. Kid looked at the building and said, "It's wonderful, it's exactly what I thought it would be, a father's school. It has perfect symmetry." He then saw Soul and Naruto and said, "Why hello, are you two here to show us around?" Naruto smirked and said, "You must be Death's son, he speaks highly of you." He looked at Kid's group closely and said, "And the two ladies with you must be Liz and Patty, the Thompson sisters." Kid smiled and said, "Why yes we are, you are very well informed, yet I heard you only arrived here a little while ago." Naruto chuckled and said, "I guess so, but this means I'm not the new guy anymore, you are." And Soul, was Black Star right, you two were waiting 3 hours? Soul smirked and said, "Yep, he's already new, he's late, and he wants to be shown around. I guess a pair in 7LIGHTS1 are amazing huh?" Naruto sighed as Kid said, "What? 7 lights?" He twitched and said, "Please get rid of the 7, make it 8. Soul, a bit confused, said, "What?" Kid then said, "If you cut 7 in half it's not symmetrical, but if you cut 8 either horizontally or vertically, it's still symmetrical. Please stop with 7, make it 8, please. I'm begging you." Naruto looked at the depressed Kid and asked, "What the hell is he talking about?" Soul asked, "Is he okay?" Liz shook her head and said, "Not, he's a bit out of it when it comes to that sort of thing." Black Star, who was now standing on one of the school's needles, shouted, "Hi ha. It doesn't matter who they are, I won't forgive anyone who tries to stand out more than me. Yeah. Death's son, I will assassinate you, and then everyone will be focused on me again." He kept ranting, not noticing the needle was starting to break until it did, causing him to fall and Kid to have the expression of a heart attack. Black Star landed on his feet and said, "I guess it couldn't handle my big existence. Time must have twisted it." Naruto rolled his eyes and said, "Dude, keep going on like that and people will think you're overcompensating. And seriously, how in the hell did he get up there? That is the second goddamn time." Liz giggled at the jab, while Patty simply laughed. Kid started to tremble and said, You killed the symmetry." Liz sighed and said, "Oh boy, he's done it now." Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked, "What do you mean by that?" Liz flipped her hair out of her face and said, "Kid is obsessed with anything symmetrical, and I mean seriously obsessed, in fact, I'm surprised he didn't say something about your coat." Naruto looked at Kid's attire and noticed she had a point. His suit was double-breasted, even on both sides, even his black hair and rings on his fingers were reflected of each other. The only thing out of place was the 3 white half rings in his hair. He heard Black Star say, "Bring it on. Watch carefully, my assassination techniques." Soul commented, "Assassinations are not supposed to be seen." Naruto noticed Kid's glare as he said, "You disgust me. If you fight with a Shinigami, I can't guarantee the safety of your soul. Liz, Patty, let's go." Liz sighed and said, "I knew it would come to this soon enough." She looked over at Naruto and gave a quick wink before shifting into a gun along with her sister. Black Star stood tall as he said, "Come on Soul, if they want to fight, we'll give 'em one." Soul sweat dropped, as did Naruto, and Soul said, "You wanted to fight them, not me, why am I getting involved?" Naruto leaned against one of the pillars and said, "Try not to wreck this place, you guys are so troublesome, shit, Shikamaru's got me doing that now too." Classroom. Maka and Tsubaki heard a small commotion coming from the window, and Ani of the other students looked out and said, "Doctor, Soul and Black Star are fighting with somebody." Naruto sweat dropped as he thought, glad boss found them. Maka then said, "There's a rule that states if 2 Meisters fight on school grounds, a teacher must deal with it." Stein nodded and after taking a puff of his cigarette and said, "That's correct." "Well then, as Soul and Black Star's partners, Maka, Tsubaki, come with me." Naruto sighed and vanished in a puff of smoke, shocking the others. Black Star and Soul were having a hard time as Kid was using twin guns, keeping them from getting close by shooting at one, then the other. Black Star got agitated and said, "If we don't get close, there's no opening." Kid looked impassive as he said, "Oh, you want it to be close combat. I don't mind. He took a single step and jumped over Black Star, making Naruto whistle as he delivered a kick to Black Star's head. As Kid landed, Soul tried to get the drop on him by using his scythe arm to cut him, only for Kid to dodge and use Lizard Patty, Naruto couldn't tell, to shoot him in the abdomen, forcing him to be launched back. He landed hard and clutched at his chest, saying, "Aw shit, that hurt like hell." Liz, in her gun form, said, "We're different from normal guns that just shoot bullets. We condense our Meister's soul wavelength and use that in bullets instead." Stein, Maka, and Tsubaki arrived, and Stein said, "It seems they started already." Maka saw Kid and asked, "Doctor, is that kid with Tegan's the guy everyone talked about?" Naruto said, "That's him already, he is Death's son. The guy has some skills, that's for sure." Stein nodded and said, "Yep, that's Death the kid. He wanted to come here, so he joined our class. Though his skills do go over his head a bit, but he is good." Stein looked over at Maka from his chair and asked, "Now Maka, you became able to see souls when we fought, correct?" Maka nodded and Stein asked, "Well then, I have a little lesson for you, if you want." Maka said, "Sure, I think." Stein chuckled and said, "Relax, I'm just gonna ask a simple question." He turned back to the fight and Naruto listened in, having an idea on where this was going. Stein then said, "Now then, you see the guns the kid is using? Are their wavelengths in perfect sync?" Maka stared at Kid as the battle progressed and noticed that the three souls were balanced. She then said, "Yeah, they are. Usually, matching your wavelength to two weapons is very difficult, but they're very stable. They seem to respect each other." "No, that's wrong. It's admiration." Stein looked pleased as he said, "That's correct. Those two are the twin demon guns, the Thompson sisters. Since they had to live off the streets, they admire a dignified soul like Kid's." Naruto sighed and said, "I see, they lived off the street too huh? At least they had each other. I can respect them, that kind of life is never easy." Tsubaki and Maka looked over and noticed his eyes had a far-off look, as if he were remembering something. Stein continued, though he was a bit nervous, "As for Kid, he's a nervous one, so he can admire the positive attitude the sisters possess." Naruto watched as Soul and Black Star tried whatever the hell they were doing, as Maka said, "Wow, they are a great team, though, compared to them, those knuckleheads are pathetic." Naruto watched in amusement, but double over laughing as Black Star tried to catch Soul after he changed in midair, only to catch him with his head. The scythe blade left a cut on his head that had blood gush out, and to make matters worse, when Black Star tried to pick Soul off the ground, he could barely lift it. Naruto watched as they traded insults, holding his ribs as he saw how much they failed at trying to work together. Though Soul said the weirdest, possibly the most gay thing ever for that moment, "Let's break up." Naruto was now rolling on the floor, being reminded of the soap operas Anko got him into, though he would never say it under threat of death at the time. Tsubaki and Maka looked on in horror. "Well," Kid asked, "should I shoot them?" Liz replied, "No, this is getting good, I wanna see this." The group watched in horror as they hugged, a sight that made Naruto remember Guy and Lee's little bit and made him almost want to shoot himself. The sight was broken up when Kid shot them both in the head at the same time. He said, "Oops, my fingers slipped." Naruto started laughing again and said, "I am really starting to like you guys, I won't be bored, that's for sure." Soul and Black Star slowly got up, Soul saying, "However, it's still a fight that we accepted, and as men, we follow through." Black Star grinned and said, "Yeah, we can't step back until we won." Kid kept an impassive face as he said, "Come, and I land it for you with the next attack." Black Star jumped at Kid, only for Kid to block him with his forearm and judo flip him over his shoulder, slamming him into the ground. Naruto looked unimpressed as Kid reminded him of Lee with his hand-to-hand prowess. Soul tried to rush him with his scythe arm, while at the same time Black Star tried to flank him from the other side, only for Kid to block Soul's attack, duck down, and shot them both in the stomach at the same time, forcing them both back. Kid then noticed his foot was wrapped in the cloth Black Star wore, giving Soul the distraction needed to drop down on Kid in his scythe form, Kid using a minimal amount of movement to dodge. He then pulled his leg towards Soul, taking Black Star flying by and hitting Soul's blade by his face. Kid moved a bit of a distance away and said, "Now I'll show you the power of a Shinigami." His soul became visible to those who could see it and Naruto switched to Sage mode to properly observe the energy flow. He saw Kid's soul start to get larger as he and his partners said, "Soul resonance." Stein and Maka looked in shock as they saw it as well, and they noticed Liz and Patty's forms start to change, becoming larger and more streamlined. When they finished the change, they went from handguns to large cannons, a Reaper mask acting as the sight. Kid Slow had a change as well, as black needles crackling with electricity extended from his elbows. Death penalty, execution mode acquired. Naruto stared wide-eyed as Liz and Patty did a check-off, sympathy rate stable. Noise, 0.3%. Black needle soul wavelength charge complete. Feedback in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Kid then said the name of the attack, Death Cannon. A large blast shot out, and when it impacted the ground near Black Star and Soul, they were blasted away. A loud "holy shit" was heard from Naruto. Damn, I did some collateral damage in my day, but that scared the ever-loving shit out of me. Maka and Tsubaki nodded, and Stein said, that's Death's son for you, he's different from other Meisters, though Naruto, I wonder if your shield could stand up to that. Naruto shivered and said, I do not want to test that for your weird-ass experiment, Stein. They looked back at Kid, only to see him faint. Naruto said what was on their minds, what the hell was that? Maka looked at Kid's hair and said, I think I got it, Soul must have cut a bit of his hair off when Kid dodged, and he reacted because he lost symmetry. Liz inspected his hair and said, she's right, he's got a bit cut off on the side here. Naruto sighed and said, there has to be a way to break that, it would get him or his partners killed one day. Black Star and Soul were doing a victory dance, or rather, Black Star was. Naruto looked on as the partners talked it out and manifested Soul Eater, holding it up in the light, its shadow having an interesting reaction. The eye showed on the shadow, and a handle rose out of the ground. Not knowing what else to do, Naruto grasped the handle, only for the blade, if he could call it that, to rise out of the shadow. The teeth and head are black with a red outline and possesses a round cog-like shape. The handle is red, and the guard has the same coloration and cog-like shape as the teeth. The shaft is predominantly colored in shades of gray and sports a copper-colored gear in the center, with 2 intersecting black chains wrapped around it. 2 more chains are wrapped around the base of the shaft in a similar fashion. It also had 2 blue reptilian eyes, like the Soul Eater, Way to the Dawn, Chaos Ripper, and Zehenert's Keyblade. One located in the head of the blade and one embedded in the hilt. Its keychain was comprised of 3 small copper gears and ends in a charm resembling 2 halves of a gear arranged in an S shape. Void Gear, 2. Shinigami looked at the blade and said, that is a very interesting weapon, Naruto-kun, what is it? Naruto had a blank look on his face and merely said, Void Gear. Soul waved his hand in front of Naruto's face and said, hello, Earth to Naruto. You there, man? Naruto shook his head clear and noticed he held a new blade. He then said, how did I get this thing? Shinigami looked closely and said, it must have reacted to my presence, as your latent powers are dark-based and still growing. But I myself am a being of light as it were, so this was created to even out the light around you. Everyone looked at him as if he were crazy, only for Death to hold his hands up and say, that's what I think anyway. Naruto tightly gripped the handle of Void Gear and felt new powers rush into him, and his shadow moved, creating a black version of himself. He grinned and said, I like this, I like it a lot. Tsubaki looked in shock, as that power was similar to her brother's. Naruto dismissed both Soul Eater and Void Gear, and Death said, well, I just came to see how my son did on his first day, seems like it was quite exciting. Naruto nodded and said, I gotta say, that was a nice fight there, actually makes me wanna go train. I just hope Stein won't try to dissect me in my sleep. Death sighed and said, about that, Naruto-kun, I wasn't able to find an apartment you'd be able to use, so, I'm placing you with Soul and Maka. Maka said, I wouldn't mind it at all. Death got a bit chipper and said, excellent, now we must be taking Kid home now, he's had quite a day. Maka looked at Death, hoping to see his soul, yet saw nothing. She thought, that's weird, Kid is Death's son, yet I could see his soul, so why can't I see Lord Death's? Unknown to her, the reason she couldn't see it wasn't because he didn't have one, but she looked in the wrong place. If anyone had looked from outside the city, they would see a giant bubble covering the city. Naruto patted Maka's shoulder and said, come on, we gotta be going too. At night dreamscape. Naruto found himself floating in a black void. He opened his eyes, only to see the giant eye that he saw on Soul Eater and Void Gear. It looked down at him and he felt his body convulse. A bright flash then filled his vision as the convulsion stopped. When his vision cleared, he saw a familiar sight. It was a man dressed in a black cloak with red clouds. His black hair was done in a rat tail, along with the traditional Uchiha bangs on the side of his face. The only thing really visible was his eyes, the red eyes of the Sharingan. This was Itachi Uchiha, killer of his clan, and an old sensei of Naruto. Naruto then said, it's been a while, Itachi sensei. Itachi smirked and said, it certainly has, Naruto-kun. How have you been doing with my gift? Has it been serving you well? Naruto nodded and asked, it has, but I've been wondering, what exactly was it that you gave me? A dark fireball erupted in Naruto's hand, and Itachi made a bit of Amaterasu fire, which moved strangely similar to the dark fire. Itachi then said, what I gave you was the power of darkness, as you must have realized by now. Before, you just thought it was the darkness of your heart when your hate grew. But in fact, I opened the door that the darkness seeps through, allow you to gain it. Darkness takes many forms, your swords are proof of this. They will adapt and change. Naruto said, I see, so that's why Void Gear appeared, my powers are growing. Itachi nodded but said, though this will come at a price. As your dark powers grow, your use of chakra will decrease, as chakra is a force of balance, and it is slowly disappearing without a force of light to counteract it. Naruto's eyes widened and said, but wait, what about my sage mode, will I be able to use that? Itachi slowly nodded and said, you should be, as that is drawn from what is around you, not within. Naruto then asked, how do I gain light? Itachi smirked and said, you've already started, it grows with the people around you, they are your light. Our time grows short Naruto-kun, I must say one last thing. Thank you for ending my brother's foolish ambitions, my family ruined yours, and we paid for it. Naruto held a sad expression and said, no your family didn't do it, Madara did, and now he's gone. Itachi faded away, and soon Naruto woke up. The next day. Maka heard the annoying sound of her alarm going off, which took a book slammed into it to shut it off. With her mind now awake, a smell wafted to her nose. She slowly walked out of her room dressed in her usual attire, yellow sweater, white undershirt, plaid skirt. She noticed Soul sitting at the table already and noticed Naruto being the one doing the cooking. She then noticed that two Narutos were present, one fixing the table, the other finishing the cooking. Soul was drooling from the smell, and if Maka wasn't trying to keep up appearances, she would have too. Naruto, seeing this, laid down the food-filled plates and said, dig in, I may be your guest, but I figured a good meal is the best way to start the day. The sweat dropped as he noticed Soul take a single bite, then have what looked like an expression of nirvana, though when Maka did it, he couldn't help but think it looked cute. He soon heard a meowing sound, which caused Maka and Soul to freeze, and Naruto felt a something leap onto his lap, and looking down, he saw an odd cat. It wasn't the black fur or the wide eyes that were strange, but the hat it was wearing. Naruto then said, I have seen some strange things, but a cat in a hat ain't one of them. He heard the cat purr, and Maka said, Blair, don't you even try it. Naruto raised an eyebrow and noticed the weight on his lap grew, as well as a mass of purple hair was now in his vision. He noticed Soul had a bloody nose and Maka had an angry look on her face, though the look was directed more toward the mask than him. Naruto then found himself pressed into a set of bare breasts and he heard, why hello there cutie, I never saw you before. Maybe you should let Blair play with you a bit. Maka was about to pull Blair off of Naruto when she heard, as fun as that may be, it will take a bit more than a sexy body and some exhibitionism to get me. I spent 3 years training under the world's largest pervert and have seen and done things that will make you look tame. You're a few years too late to get me flustered. Blair and Maka were shocked and Soul was looking at him as if he were God. Naruto, his plate empty, calmly moved away from the seat, leaving Blair looking like a deer in the headlights. Naruto went into his room to get his coat and when he got back into the kitchen, he noticed Blair was dressed. She wore an outfit that might make even Anko blush, as all she had on were a pair of short shorts and a bikini top, along with a short jacket. What she wears after joining the cabaret. Blair then said, not bad, but let Blair take you shopping. Those clothes are nice, but I know a good place to go. Naruto sighed, having dealt with Ino meant he learned not to argue with women on this sort of thing. Fine, but the coat stays. He then felt himself get dragged away and to his surprise, he saw buildings zip by until they landed at a store. Naruto shook his head clear as he noticed some of the things in the store. There were rows upon rows of clothes. He then heard Blair say, I saw lots of great clothes here, now they must have something you'd like. Naruto zipped through the racks and went into the changing room. 10 minutes later. Naruto came out and noticed Blair drooling, along with a few of the girls working there. Naruto now wore his cloak as before, but he wore jeans underneath, along with a black shirt and a gray vest. In KH2 Riku, but full gray with black stripes instead of white and yellow. He had his sandal shoes from his time as a ninja, and to finish it off, he had a strange white headband on, the wrapping going down his back, the center of the band having the kanji for 1 and the Konoha symbol in the red dot. Yes, it is the number 1 headband from Afro Samurai, just altered. Blair was clapping and said, good, I knew this was a good choice. I saw you had a lot of ninja-like things and this store has the closest things to it. Naruto smirked and said, thanks for being considerate, now then, I better pay for these. Blair smiled and said, I took care of that already while you were busy changing. The nearest teller nodded, confirming her story. Naruto grinned and said, and the fact that my wallet is a bit smaller has nothing to do with it, right? Blair looked away and then Naruto noticed the time and said, oh shit, I'm gonna be late, I gotta go. Naruto quickly vanished, leaving some of the girls to groan as the eye candy left. DWMA Crescent Classroom. Stein was about to take the life of an innocent being, dissect another frog, when Naruto walked in. Stein looked up and said, you're late, only by a few minutes. Naruto said, sorry, a girl dragged me to shopping, you know how it is. A few of the guys looked with apathy as they knew that horror, the girls giving them an elbow to the gut. Naruto sat between Maka and Tsubaki, both girls blushing up a storm. Tsubaki thought, wow, he looks even better than before, maybe I can get him alone so I can, no, bad Tsubaki, bad, not yet. She then said, good morning Naruto-kun, did you sleep well? Naruto nodded and said, I wonder what missions are available. I noticed the board on the way in. Maka then said, me and Soul have a lesson in Italy if you want to come along. Naruto nodded and said, sure, maybe then I can finally cut loose a bit. Naruto leaned back and Tsubaki noticed the tips of his hair slowly turn black. Time skip Florence, Italy. Night loomed over the Italian city, a lone figure seen only by its silhouette against the moon. It floated on a broom, the figure soon illuminated in the moonlight, revealing Medusa. She looked down at the Firenze Church of Santa Maria Novello. She then thought, you seem to be the last of the weapons and meisters, please eat a lot of souls, devour them all. Inside the church, a lone girl stood in the center, surrounded by a group of thugs. She wore a dress that hugged her body, yet wore wrist guards, and had a collar on her neck. She held a black broadsword, her left arm holding her right arm to her side as she nervously looked around, her eyes darting all over the place, as she said, I'm still not good enough. A Kishin is not like this. One of the thugs was getting annoyed and said, then what the hell are you then? Medusa looked down and began to chant, Nake Snake, Cobra Kabubra. It's okay, be confident. Krona can become a Kishin. Something in Krona snapped into place as she started to laugh, aha, ha, I'm a Kishin. One of the thugs responded, don't come into our headquarters and then think you can just fricking go home. You damn brat. Krona looked around and said, the Church of Santa Maria Novella is a public place, even though there isn't a place for you people anywhere. And that's why Ragnarok will eat for me, right? Hey Ragnarok. The sword grew a mouth near its base, and it oddly smirked before letting out a very loud scream. The thugs covered their ears as Krona's eyes darted around again as she said, hey everybody, did you have fun? The doors in this church open inward, don't they? Haha, yesterday was fun, what was it that happened? And, my blood is black. The screaming continued, even as the grinning moon started to leak blood from its mouth, a sign of the death of innocent souls. Scene change. Maka stood on a chimney, Soul in his weapon form, as she stared down her target and said, murderer from Emerald Lake, Sunsenjay, I will take your soul. The masked man complained, that's disgusting, how come you guys get to kill as much as you want? He barely noticed his body sliced in half as it faded away to reveal the soul, as Maka said, it's not like we do whatever we feel like. This finishes our extra assignment. She heard clapping and noticed Naruto on the roof next to her and he said, nicely done, a single swing through the body, causing an instant kill by cutting through the heart, a lung, and a bit of the stomach from what I saw. Maka blushed at the praise and said, thank you, though I know I'm not like my mother yet. Naruto smiled and said, we can never be like our parents, but we can strive to surpass them. I have no doubt that you'll be stronger than your mother, as every new generation is meant to be stronger than the last. Soul finished eating the Kishin egg and Maka asked, hey Soul, do souls taste good? Naruto thought, I wondered about that too. Soul swallowed and grinned, saying, yeah, they're good, but they don't really have a taste. Though the texture, man it feels good the way it goes down. Naruto then wondered out loud, weird, though I wonder how Black Star is doing. Soul scoffed and said, those guys are remedial junkies, they barely ever get past a single soul. Naruto sighed and said, poor Tsubaki-chan, stuck with an idiot. Maka nodded and said, yeah, makes you wonder if she would do better partnered with you Naruto-kun. Naruto raised an eyebrow and Maka said, well, you two are pretty similar, not to mention her skills and yours complement each other a lot. Black Star is determined, but he's got it all wrong. Soul nodded and said, yeah, in the wrong direction is right. Maka froze in place as she felt a reaction and looked toward the Santa Maria church. Soul was walking away as he said, well, seeing as we're done here, mind if I bring the bike around? Maka, still looking at the church, said, wait a minute Soul. Naruto raised an eyebrow as Soul asked, huh? What's up? Maka muttered, that church. Soul shook his head and said, if you want to go sightseeing we need to do it another time. Maka stared harder at the church and said, that's not it. What is this? This feeling, like a lot of excited souls. Ugh, this noise is terrible, concentrate, concentrate. Naruto watched as Maka focused and she said, the reaction from a Meister weapon team is coming from that church and they're surrounded by 50 human souls. Soul looked at her like she was crazy and asked, hey, you can tell that from this far away? Naruto smirked as this proved that Maka was starting to get stronger. Maka continued, this is the first time, the humans are most likely the Materazzi gang, they run around in that church every night. But something's not right, the Materazzi seem like troublemakers, but they shouldn't be on death's list. Naruto had a thoughtful expression and said, then it must be a Rouge element. I highly doubt the DWMA has every Meister and weapon under its roof. Soul nodded, as it made sense. He then said, well I doubt it's anything we need to worry about. It's Saturday night, you sure no one there just doesn't have the fever? Naruto sighed as the duo began to argue and noticed they got on Soul motorcycle. He began to follow them by rooftop until they reached the church. Naruto whistled looking at it, it was impressive piece of work. Maka froze and she quickly ran to the door of the church, saying, no, it can't be, it's just not possible. Naruto felt a cold chill go down his neck as he felt a fast and great loss of life. What the hell? Didn't Maka say there were a bunch of humans in here? How the hell are they gone so quickly? Soul asked, what the hell happened? Maka then said, her eyes never leaving the door, 50 human souls just vanished and only the weapon and Meister are left inside. Maka placed a gloved hand on the door, a chill going down her spine as she thought, I know I shouldn't open this door. But I need to see, I have to see, as a DWMA student. She pushed the door open, Naruto and Soul shocked to see a single person inside, in the strangest clothes. Naruto felt a certain uneasiness looking at the girl, though her dress would make her look like a nun. The girl looked at them and said, that's right, the door's open inward. Soul looked around and said, what the hell? I thought you said 2 people were here, then why do I see 1 person? Maka studied the girl closely and said, that's true, there are 2 souls, but only 1 person. That can only mean, the weapon is in her body. Naruto drew out Soul Eater and said, shit, this is not gonna end well. DWMA Infirmary. Spirit was having a bit of a problem. Let's hear it, that Maka would be on an extracurricular lesson. But if I want to see Maka, I gotta get to the DWMA, no matter what. He continued to ponder, but said, but, this school is one giant obstacle Frankenstein. Even though I wanna see my daughter, he's a huge wall. He then shouted, but Papa won't give up. When he overcomes this wall, Papa's love will be spread inside of Maka. But before that, I must let these doctors treat my wounded heart. He threw the door wide open, jumping in as he said, I'm here. I was waiting my angel. Please heal my heart quickly with your medical love. He felt himself grab onto a body, but when he looked up, he noticed it was Stein, who said, what the fuck are you doing? Spirit then jumped off him and hid under the covers of the nearest bed, as Stein said, I was looking for you. Spirit peeked out of the covers as he said, I don't know what you're doing here, but the scars from those experiments of yours are completely healed. I'm not scared of you anymore. Stein took a puff of his cigarette as he said, oh really? Then did you notice I swapped the middle toes of your left and right foot? Spirit's jaw dropped as he quickly took his shoes and socks off, examining them closely, saying what? How is that possible? There's no way, Stein smirked and said, just kidding. Spirit looked up from his toes as Stein said, but, Maka's certainly growing up. When she heard that Senpai was getting married, she was honestly worried. It definitely won't work out, was what she thought. However, she was convinced when she saw Senpai Itachi happily cuddling up. Saying, it's okay. Their love is eternal. Spirit looked down as he said, that's, well, you might not have known. Sid walked in and noticed the two, Spirit seeming very nervous, but actually, we got divorced last month. Stein smirked and said, I know. Spirit grabbed Stein by his shirt and said, damn it. I'll kill you, you bastard. Sid got in between them, saying, I said stop it, I never let a fight go. That's the kind of man I was. Stein stopped smirking and said, the demon sword has appeared. Florence. Krona was looking down as Soul, in weapon form asked, what's going on Maka? Do you think there's a weapon in that girl? Maka held Soul at the ready as she said, be careful, it's coming out. Krona acted as if she had a massive headache and a black blob shot out of her back, still connected to it. Krona let out a scream, showing the process caused large amount of pain on her part. Maka was speechless, though Naruto said, holy shit, I did not just see what I think I just saw, that shit is just gross man, and I was in a snake's stomach before. Ignoring his comment, Maka noticed the blob take a more human shape, though it did not look human at all. The blob shifted to having muscular arms and torso, white gloves on its hands and a white X for a face, the eyes appearing white, with an X for the pupil. The figure had spikes coming out of its skin in various places. Then, to the trio's surprise, the creature bumped its fist into Krona's head, inciting an ow from the girl, and the creature started to give her a noogie, poking and prodding her face as she said, that hurts, that hurts. Stop it. Don't poke me, it hurts, stop it. Don't pinch my nose like that. Stop it you bastard. That's enough. The creature backed off, saying, whoa, Krona's scary when angry. Maka merely sweat dropped and said, it can talk. Naruto sighed and said, still not the strangest thing I ever saw. Maka then said, taking souls that aren't on Lord Death's list and hunting souls is forbidden. Are you from the DWMA? Krona looked confused and said, DWMA? What's that? The creature then started to mess with her face, making it hard to hear what she said clearly. Medusa-sama says it's okay to eat them. So what's the problem? Maka, looking disgusted, said, I'm going to report this to Lord Death. Ragnarok scoffed and said, let's go Krona. Yeah, and Ragnarok shifted into a black broadsword. Krona slowly swung the sword around her body until she charged forward, her sword coming from below, Maka moving Soul's blade to block it, making Krona stop. She lurched forward from lack of momentum until Naruto clotheslined her in the neck with the inside of his elbow and dragging her forward a bit, said, lariat. He slammed Krona hard into the church floor, leaving a large indent in the floor, and he jumped back. Soul whistled and said, damn, where did you learn that? Naruto wiped his chin and said, my friend Karabi taught me in preparation for a war that was happening where I used to live, he sorta became an older brother to me. He was just like me. He noticed Krona get up and he said, how the hell, her head should have come off since I added wind chakra to it. He then remembered Itachi's words and thought, what did he mean, is my chakra really getting weaker? Krona cracked her neck and before Naruto could move, charged at Maka with the same tactic, only to be blocked again, this time, Maka using the top of Soul's shaft to flip herself over Krona and drop kick her in the face. Naruto whistled, as it reminded him almost of Zabuza. Maka slashed at Krona's neck, only for them to see the blade stop at the skin. Naruto saw this and thought, how? I was certain that Soul was gonna cut this chick's head off. Maka's not weak, so it must be something. Krona said in a demented voice, with a strike like that, you can't decapitate me. Maka saw blood coming out of the wound and to her surprise, the blood was black. Krona held her sword near Maka's face and said, that's right, my blood is black. Maka jumped back and Naruto said, it must be the blood. Maka nodded and said, that's right, the blood must be the weapon. If it hardens after the vein is cut, then it can prevent our blades from going through. Soul groaned and said, so we can't damage them. Maka shook her head, Naruto gained a cocky smirk and his eyes changed to yellow and he said, yeah, that may be, but I'm certain I can take down this loser. Maka looked and noticed his demeanor changed and was holding void gear in his left hand. His hair gained a bit more black than just the tip. He slowly walked forward, Krona seemingly growing scared until Naruto vanished. What Maka and Soul saw next will be ingrained in their minds. The floor began to get cut up, Krona herself feeling her body getting cut, though Ragnarok reduced the damage as best he could. That didn't stop Naruto in the slightest, as he appeared behind Krona, his blades lowered, and Krona's body became littered with cuts that would kill a normal person. Medusa, watching from above, looked on in horror as if it weren't for the black blood, Krona would have been a bloody stain on the church floor. She thought, my god, he's so strong, I can't believe it, it's like watching the Reaper fight, but this feeling, it's madness. Ragnarok appeared out of Krona's back and said, get up idiot, he'll kill you if you don't get up. I'm healing the wounds as best I can, but you gotta get up. Naruto turned, Maka getting a good look at the sadistic grin he had as he raised void gear over his head for a slash, and Krona said, Ragnarok, scream. The mouth on the blade let out a huge scream, which brought Naruto to his knees, clutching his ears in pain as Krona slowly got up, her wounds closing. Maka watched in horror as Krona raised her sword and attacked, Maka's hands raising a guard by instinct, as a black wave was unleashed by Krona scraping her sword on the floor, forcing Maka back. Soul then said, "Shit, Maka, how the hell did Naruto get beat by a scream? And what was that?" Maka shook her head and said, "I don't know, but I hope he's alright." Maka had to dodge as Krona attacked, her slash having the added effect of the scream, but Krona then held it in the thrust position, jabbing the blade forward. Maka blocked it using the shaft of the side, thinking she'd be safe. She was sadly mistaken, as a cut appeared on Soul's human form, surprising them both. Maka kicked Krona in her chest, forcing her away, and Naruto lightly started to stir. Maka then thought, I can't block, or Soul will get hurt, I can't attack, as I can't cut her. I can't run either, I won't leave Naruto behind with this girl. I can't do it. She dodged Krona's swings until she felt herself get pressed into the doors of the church. She tried to get the doors open, but she heard Krona say, "You should be more aware of your surroundings. Those doors only open inward." Maka noticed Krona over her, her sword raised high. Soul then said, "Maka, you need to guard." Maka shook her head and said, "But if I do that, you'll..." Krona swung her sword down, Soul getting in the way, blocking it with his body. The entire room fell silent. Naruto slowly awoke and saw Soul on the ground having a large cut across his torso. His anger flared at the sight as he gripped Soul Eater and Void Gear tightly. Medusa looked down and said, "Only Krona the one to hear it, Krona, finish them off quickly, but bring the boy to me. Those other two, kill them and eat their souls." Krona silently raised her sword, only to feel her body be impaled from behind, Naruto holding her up, and he said, "You bitch, you think I'm going to let you hurt them? Let you kill them? Not on your life." He threw her through the doors of the church, barely hitting Stein and Spirit. Spirit saw Naruto's eyes, yellow with cat-like slits, waves of dark aura seeping off him. With each step the dark aura grew, Krona trying to back away. Naruto turned to Stein and said, "Soul's been injured, he suffered a massive slash to his abdominal area from his left shoulder to his right hip. He's losing a lot of blood, see if you can at least stall it." Stein nodded and quickly got to work, Spirit watching in awe as Naruto gave the orders. Naruto turned back to Krona, walking slowly forward, not even moving when she used her bloody needle. The tips of the needles broke against a wall of shadows, Naruto vanished, and a series of portals surrounded Krona, and a dark voice said, "Black Dance. Dark Sonic." Naruto rushed out of one portal, slashing Krona with Soul Eater and Void Gear before going into another portal, and he repeated the process over and over. Death Room. Death watched in horror at the brutality Naruto delivered. He thought, this power, has he? No, he hasn't fallen into madness. This is his anger, pure and simple. Has he grown attached to the students in such a short time? Or is it Maka and Tsubaki he's really attached to? Either way, I'm glad he's on our side, I would hate to fight him, seeing as his power is not yet fully developed. Florence. Maka watched as Krona fell to the ground, her body burned, slashed, and most of all, her soul became unstable. Her body used too much black blood. Naruto on the other hand, dismissed his blades and walked away. Until he felt a surge of power behind and above him. Medusa, feeling the need to retreat, thought, to think, Krona was taken down so easily by Naruto-kun, it's a testament to his power. But I need to get Krona home, her body has suffered greatly. Soul protection, release. Everyone looked up as a great wavelength passed over them. Naruto looked up, his eyes turning yellow again. Maka shivered as she felt the wavelength and heard Stein say, "Soul protect." Maka, curious asked, "What's that?" Stein explained, "It's a high-level magic that witches use. It creates a shield that neutralizes their wavelength, making them seem like regular humans." Naruto's hands burned with a dark fire as Medusa said, "My, such horrible children, doing that to poor Krona. I will have to punish you." Snake, Cobra Kabubra. Vector arrow. A swarm of arrows branched out from behind Medusa, and before Stein could react, Naruto jumped in front and he slammed his hands on the ground, saying, "Guard." A large wall that sparked with electricity surrounded Spirit, Maka, Soul and Stein, Naruto himself protected by the dark shield. The arrows crashed against the walls, but could not break through. Medusa, seeing this as a chance to get away, summoned a snake to grab Krona and vanished. Naruto noticed her leaving, but turned back to Soul, seeing Maka worried made him hug her in order to help her. She blushed but didn't back away. Stein coughed, keeping Spirit back from trying to interfere, and said, "We need to get Soul back, he won't last long without medical attention." The others nodded and quickly rushed back to the DWMA. DWMA shower room. Tsubaki was busy taking a shower when she heard some of the other girls talking. "Hey, did you hear? The one-star weapon Soul was hospitalized." "Really? I hope the poor guy's okay. I wonder how Maka is doing." Tsubaki thought, what happened to Soul? Infirmary. Maka sat outside the infirmary, Naruto standing across from her. Maka nervously asked, "Naruto, what was that back there? You acted like a different person. And you were beaten by that loud scream." Naruto sighed and said, "I have certain traits that are more enhanced than the average human, my hearing being one of them. If I focused, I could hear your heartbeat from the other side of the school. Add in that, plus a huge noise, it's a miracle my eardrums didn't rupture. And for how I acted, I'm not so sure myself, after I was knocked out, I mostly ran on autopilot you could say. If it scared you, I'm sorry for that." Maka blushed and said, "It wasn't that, you were fighting to make sure we made it home. I'm glad that we did. I'm glad you fought as hard as you did." Naruto blushed and said, "No worries, in fact, I may have an idea on how to help you get stronger, but it will have to wait a bit." Maka was about to ask what he meant when Stein walked out of the room. He looked at Maka and said, "You wait here a lot, huh? Don't you think it would be a good idea to go take a shower?" Maka shook her head and asked, "How's Soul doing?" Naruto listened in and heard Stein say, "The procedure was a success, after a bit of rest, he should be just fine." Maka smiled and said, "That's great. Thank you very much. Is it alright if I went in to see Soul?" Stein smiled and said, "I don't see why not." Maka quickly went in the room and Naruto asked, "Alright doc, cut the crap, what's his condition really?" "That was a serious injury. He lucky he made it home." Stein took a drag of his cigarette and said, "Can't get past you can I?" "Well, his wound is fine, the surgery took care of it easy enough," but Naruto narrowed his eyes, making Stein gulp and say, "But, there's something else, you could call it a curse." Naruto hit his fist against the wall, the word curse bringing back memories of a certain Sannin. Stein continued, saying, "The black blood of Ragnarok has invaded his bloodstream. For now, I can't tell you what his condition will be." Naruto seethed and said, "Shit, this is the curse mark all over again." He then saw Black Star kick the door to the infirmary open, Tsubaki following him in, and when he went inside, he saw Black Star standing on Soul's bed, trying to shake him awake. Naruto grabbed him by the collar and dragged him off, saying, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Soul needs his rest if he wants to recover, you moron." Maka slammed her book down on Black Star's head, leaving him in the bed next to Soul. Naruto scoffed and he heard, it seems my door has been broken down." Naruto turned and saw Medusa. He blushed as he felt her hug him and say, well, long time no see Naruto-kun, I had almost thought you forgot about little old me." Maka and Tsubaki with red with anger and jealousy. But they respectfully bowed and said, "Good evening Medusa-sensei." Black Star woke up out of the blue and asked, "Oh? Did you come to see Soul?" Naruto looked at Black Star and thought, he reminds me of Pervy Sage, the guy will always get up after a beating from an angry woman. Medusa cleared her throat and asked, excuse, but, Naruto-kun, would you please help me with something? Maka's father has gotten himself clinging to my leg." They looked down and noticed that Spirit was in fact cuddling her leg, which got tics from Naruto and Maka. Spirit soon found himself in the same bed Black Star was in. Medusa then asked, it seems Soul has gotten himself in a nasty situation, hasn't he?" Maka looked down and said, "Yeah, it's all my fault." Naruto then said, "No, it's not, unless you account for rushing into it in the first place. Usually I was the one doing that. Regardless, you weren't prepared, but now you will be. I'll make sure of that." Medusa smiled and said, "I bet she'll get stronger if you help her train Naruto-kun." Naruto blushed, not noticing Medusa turning her back, her eyes turning black and a small snake leaving out the corner of her mouth, as she thought, "Soon, you'll be all mine Naruto-kun." A few days later. Soul found himself floating in a void. A single thought passed through his head, "It hurts." He could see nothing, as he thought, which way is up? And which way is down? Where should I go, help me? He looked around and saw a glimmer of light. A light. The exit. He heard a voice say, "No don't. Stop." Soul thought, that voice, it's Maka's voice. "Wait for me. I'm coming." No. He burst through, only to find out, to his horror, that he came out of Maka's chest, blood leaking from her lips. Soul woke with a scream. He clutched at his body and he heard a voice saying his name. He looked toward the voice and saw Naruto looking out the window as he stood on the sill, though he turned and said, "Did I wake you, motherfucker? You were screaming loud as shit in your sleep. What kind of fucked up dream was it?" Maka and Medusa rushed into the room because of the scream. Naruto looked at them and said, "He's awake," sounded like whatever dream he had scared the shit out of him though. Medusa sighed in relief, though when she turned away, she thought, Ragnarok's black blood is blended with soul, he'll make a great test subject. Naruto watched as Maka and Soul argued over what happened, and he said, "I don't see why you both are talking about it still. The point is that we're alive, giving us a chance to get stronger. And one Soul is out of bed, I'll personally put you two through my style of training." He jumped off the windowsill, and as he left the room, said, "I'll catch you two later. I got a bit of stuff to do." Naruto walked down the hall and noticed Medusa in her office. Gaining a sly smile, he knocked on her door and said, "Knock knock, is the angel in?" Medusa looked up from her papers and said, "Why yes she is." Naruto smiled and said, "I was wondering, perhaps if you weren't busy, I'd like to call in that rain check." Medusa smiled and said, "Sure, I would love to." She put the papers away, Naruto catching the words black blood on a few. Medusa shut her drawers and said, "Well then, I doubt I need to show you any of the clothing stores, now do I?" Naruto smirked and said, "No, a friend took care of that already, though that leaves us with more time now doesn't it?" Medusa smirked, as over the past few days this became a sort of game for them. They would casually flirt like this, making Medusa feel as though they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Naruto followed her past the library, where he heard Black Star and Kid talking about some legendary sword. He sighed and figured, he must have been sent here to do work, got sidetracked, and now about to do dumb shit. He quickly made a clone, which went into the library, and as he followed Medusa he thought, God bless shadow clones. Naruto saw Stein approach as he spoke about a holy sword, and immediately it caught Kid and Black Star's interest. They whizzed past as Naruto asked, "The Seiken. Is it that strong a sword?" Stein nodded and said, "Yeah, but it is not worth getting, trust me." Naruto shrugged and went to look at a few of the books in the library. He then asked, "And how exactly is it that bad? I mean, if it's that strong, I know it must have a drawback, right?" Stein made an odd face and said, "It's quite possibly the worst partner you could ever have." Naruto raised an eyebrow and noticed Tsubaki walk in. He said, "Hey, what's up?" "Great, I sounded like death right there, not the smartest thing." Tsubaki noticed him and said, "I was looking for Black Star. He messed up another lesson and I heard he was sent here for the punishment. I wonder why he won't focus." Naruto sighed and said, "I don't know, but from what I can guess, he doesn't like boring things and these extra lessons must be boring for him. It's only a guess." Tsubaki sighed and sat in an empty chair. She uncharacteristically slammed her head against the table she was sitting at and said, "It's always the same, Black Star is so focused on his ego that he barely notices anything else. I just don't get him sometimes." She felt a hand on her shoulder and she blushed as Naruto smiled at her. He then said, "People are complicated. I'm sure he has his reasons, but it's no use dwelling on it if he never bothers to focus. But despite his faults, I can see he's a loyal guy, even if he does things the wrong way." Tsubaki smiled and said, "Thanks, I needed to hear that." On the inside, she thought, "Oh my god, he's so sweet, and from what I heard from Maka about their mission, he's absolutely perfect. Maybe since no one is around, I can just, wait, no, bad, I can't, not yet." Sid walked in an hour later and noticed the entire room was clean. Impressed, he said, "Well, I guess Black Star learned his lesson." He turned and noticed Naruto and Tsubaki finishing up the last of the books and he said, "Damn it, he left all the work for Tsubaki and Naruto. Where the hell did he go?" Naruto looked up and said, "I heard him and Kid going on about some legendary sword, Seiken." Sid froze and said, "He went after that sword. The one that can split the sky and raise the earth. That holy sword." Naruto nodded and Sid said, "Well, if that's the case, I better just leave it as is. I might as well go grade some tests." Naruto and Tsubaki sweat dropped and Naruto asked, what is it about that sword that no one wants to talk about?" Tsubaki then said, "Yeah, I wanna know about it too. What kind of weapon is the Seiken?" Stein sighed, taking a drag of his cigarette and said, "Well, as the story goes, anyone who wields it gains wings of light and can instantly teleport. Not only that, but they can cut the air in a single swing. There is no weapon stronger in the world." Tsubaki then asked, "But it can only match the wavelength of the chosen hero, right?" Stein shook his head and said, "No, that's not the case. Surprisingly, anyone can use the sword. But no matter what, even if your soul matches with it perfectly, no human on earth can deal with Excalibur. Naruto sighed and asked, don't tell me, it's the most annoying son of a bitch in the world. Stein made a face and said, yeah, not in so many words, but yeah. Naruto, seeing where this was headed asked, so the reason Sid left without saying much is because, yeah, dealing with Excalibur for an hour is worse than cleaning the library. Tsubaki smiled and said, it's not so bad, I like to clean. Naruto sighed and said, well, I guess those two are gonna get a harsh lesson. I hope they learn from this. He sat on one of small couches in the room and leaned back, only to feel a bit of weight next to him, and to his surprise, Tsubaki was snuggling up to him. Stein glanced over and thought, I was right, she does have an attraction to someone in the group, and to think it was our resident sage. The next day. Black Star, Tsubaki, Kid, Liz and Patty met out in the hallway. Black Star and Kid stopped for a moment before Black Star and Kid shook hands, Black Star saying, it was great working with you. Kid nodded and said, likewise. Their partners looked on and wondered what they meant, before Tsubaki remembered what they left the library to do. They then heard someone say, yo. Everyone gather around. Seems like you've been chewed up pretty bad, Black Star, Kid. They turned and saw Soul walking down the hallway, Black Star saying, Soul. You're all healed up. Can't get excited without you, after all. Soul grinned and said, thanks. Naruto came around the corner and placed a hand on Soul's shoulder and said, I see you awake now, after class is over today, you and Maka are gonna be doing my kind of training, so what happened then doesn't happen again. Soul silently wished he never got out of the hospital bed. Naruto noticed everyone laughing at Black Star and Kid, and he went into the classroom and started to laugh so hard he had to hold onto the door frame. Maka ushered them in, and what they saw disturbed both of them. It was a pair of giant wreaths, each with a picture of Excalibur on them, and a little banner under it saying each of their names. On a banner above it, it said, I'll always be waiting for you, Excalibur. Naruto stopped laughing a bit and said, what the fuck is this? What the hell did you two do while you were out? Seriously, what the hell? Black Star and Kid both said, are you serious? Maka looked at it and asked, what is this? Soul then said, yeah, that's pretty harsh. Black Star and Kid made an odd face and said, so annoying, disgusting. That afternoon. Naruto stood in the clearing away from the walls of the city, Maka and Soul behind him. Naruto grinned and said, now, I bet you two are wondering what kind of training this is, correct? They both nodded, and Maka asked, yeah, what are we gonna do? Naruto looked back and said, the mission to Florence was a fiasco, there is no doubt on that. If I wasn't there, or if Stein didn't show up, you both would be dead. They looked down at that, though Naruto then said, but that's what this training is going to be about. You two work well together, but if you're ever apart, you're going to die. Maka and Soul looked at him wide-eyed, and Maka stammered out, but we, Naruto raised a hand and said, I will be training you two on your individual powers, so should you ever be separated, or if one of you is out of commission, you will still have a chance. Maka's eyes narrowed, and Naruto said, I'm sorry if that was a little too much, but it's the truth, what if you faced Krona again, but I wasn't there? Or worse, if you ran into that witch? Answer, you'd both end up dead. But with this training, that won't happen. Soul stood at the ready and asked, you never told us what you planned on, so what is it? Naruto grinned and said, I'm going to draw out Maka's potential and help you learn how to fight without going into weapon form. Soul. Seeing raised eyebrows, he continued, Maka, I know you don't like the guy, but regardless, your father is Spirit, Death's current death side. And with that, the power of a death side is within you as well. The first step we're going to take is forcing your weapon blood to the surface. He held out his right hand to the side, and dark fire grew out into a strange weapon. It had the same appearance as Soul Eater, but in fact looked like two were fused at the handles, creating a double-sided pole arm, with Soul Eater acting as the blades. Naruto swung it around a bit, testing its balance as Maka and Soul watched. Naruto then pointed one of the blades at Maka and said, where I came from, your weapon power would be considered what is called a Kekkei Genkai, or bloodline trait. And there is only one way that it can be unleashed. Maka and Soul dreaded the answer, as Naruto said, and that is through a life and death situation. When you honestly believe you're about to die and your body feels helpless, that is when its natural defense instincts will kick in and the bloodline is awakened. Chapter end.
Now watch daily exclusive uncensored Lemon stories and mature content, along with NSFW images, featuring Harem girls characters from the fics. Access all this and more on my Patreon. Click the link in the description to explore.